podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, sisters. And so the bottle job begins. No, I'm not just talking about Arsenal, but also my recent FPL performances, which just hit the January blues a little bit. Recording early due to work commitments this week, and it's definitely my turn to be. I wrote at the time I wrote this, I was in a little bit of a grump, I've got to say, but now I feel a little bit better, to be honest. A cheeky school night beer. Do drink responsibly, people. And the chat with Sam should hopefully get me back to feeling cheery and chipper once more. Sam, how are you, mate? All good?
Yeah, very similar to you. It was a little bit of a disappointment today after yesterday's drama. I was hoping for some more excitement today, let's call it, especially from the late kickoff. But all in all, very well. Went out for a roast, had a couple of drinks. So I'm in good spirits and looking forward to this one. So as always, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's agenda, first things first, I think we really do need to address the massive elephant in the room, which was yesterday's drama at about 10:49, I think it was, about 11 minutes before the deadline. We had some early team news, some leaks. So I think we need to talk about it and the drama that ensued over the following 11 minutes before the deadline. Before moving on to, of course, the game week 23 results so far. Obviously, we've still got a game to come. Then we'll take a look at how the template is shaping up at the moment after all of the drama of yesterday. It has shifted it a little bit. So we're taking a look at the top 10K as it currently stands on Live FPL and predict where it might look or it might go in the next few weeks, especially with the wild card on the horizon for a lot of people in game week 32, and predict what it might look like by that time. Of course, we're going to be looking at form versus fixtures as well, and probably a more in-depth look than usual, and 1 week punts, best captains, before finally taking a look at how our teams are set up ahead of game week 24. It is Sunday, the 25th of January. The game week isn't over, nor is January. It still feels like a very long month to me. We've got Everton and Leeds to come tomorrow. You've got Tarkowski yet to play, but how are we doing so far, Tom?
Well, I think before we do that, let's talk about yesterday, because I think that directly informs how we did what we did. 10:49 yesterday, Lazy FPL tweeted that Haaland and Foden do not start, and I posted that as quickly as I could across to Blue Sky. So they don't post there, so everyone was aware of what was going on. And it was just a case of kind of, where were you at that seismic event? And I think that's something we'll come back to in a little bit, because I feel like this has kind of been one thing which has happened this year. And it's not been as sort of frequent as the years gone by that you have a big leak like this.
Yeah.
But when it happened, I think that it did feel like a big sort of like WTF, red mist sort of descended. What am I going to do? Like, where were you at the time when you found out? I mean, I don't know if I texted you or you just seen it yourself and texted me, but we definitely first texted each other. It's like, oh, WTF.
Yeah, I was at the gym. I'd kind of locked in my team. I'd gone to do chest day. I was doing some skull crushers at the time at the end of chest day. And all of a sudden got the here we go from you saying, because we'd been texting each other. You'd been in the car, right? And you just, I think, got to your destination.
Yeah.
I text you to confirm, no news. I think we're safe. Let's just lock in. We'll be fine. And about a minute later, you messaged me to say, oh, here we go. We've got the leak from Lazy FPL. And the following 10 minutes were just pure chaos. I was stood by a machine at the gym for like 10 minutes. Probably everyone else in the gym was looking at me like I was a crazy person, just like pacing up and down. No idea what I was doing. I definitely didn't react in the best way. I don't know whether you reacted in a more calm way than I did, but it must have been a bit of a sight in that moment. Yeah. What can you do? I mean, what did you do, Tom?
Well, because I'm an FPL nerd and because I'd anticipated something like this could be on the cards, I purposely drove out to my mum's early, actually, which sounds incredibly sad outside of this particular context, but that is nonetheless what I did. Got there with my daughter around sort of 10:40 to make sure I'd be online for any leaks, which is ridiculous, but that's what I kind of did. And yeah, even though I was in an environment where my mum had my daughter, I was just like, "Oh, can you give me a couple of minutes just to kind of check the football news or something like that?"
Mm.
It still didn't prepare me for the manic panic that ensued. It simply, I don't know. I felt like I just stood there for what felt like a couple of minutes, just like with my phone in my hand, just looking at the looking at the
Yeah.
what before responding. And I just felt like it was everywhere in my chats. Like there was you, there's loads of people like obviously sending the news to each other and be like, "What am I going to do? Oh, what should I do with my team?" And there's like, come on, mate. No one's going to be advising you because we're all going to be sat there wondering what the hell we're going to do ourselves. And that decision,
Exactly.
I just think the decision making was clearly not going to be thorough and considered, more frenetic and impulsive. And I don't know, man. It was such a strange sort of weird whirlwind, like where I was glad my mum had my daughter and was looking after her because I was just totally in my own world for 10, 15 minutes after that. And I'm totally unaware. I'm totally aware, sorry, but not everyone else is in the situation where they could have done that.
Yeah.
And of course, it's just FPL, and much more horrible things are going on in our world right now. But I do really sympathise with those who were unable to react to the leak and got pissed off at it. Like, it really shouldn't be this way. And
Mm.
but I suppose like it seemed that the privileged sort of like not quite the same as last year with the Saka one, particularly, when it seemed that a certain number of people kind of got that news and then reacted, and then we saw people selling Saka out of nowhere, so we reacted. But it seems like the swings didn't really uh, happen that much with the alternatives that were brought in. I think the only thing I can think of was if you were going to sell Foden, Forenzo, or Semenyo, if you got news and you didn't do it, and that might be you'd be down a few points there. But yeah,
Mm.
I think kind of it could have been a lot worse, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just shouldn't be this way, should it?
No, it feels kind of dirty when you react to those leaks because you know that not everyone else is going to be in that position, and you know that even though there is quite a large engaged crowd in FPL now, the majority of people aren't anywhere near as engaged to the point where they're scrolling through X 10 minutes before a deadline, knowing exactly which accounts are the ones that would normally have FPL team news. I had certain accounts on notification basically as soon as they were tweeting, filtering through to my phone, knowing that those, if anyone was going to get the leaks, they would be the ones. And I'm sure a few people out there listening to this pod would be exactly the same. It does feel like an unfair advantage. And I think as soon as the deadline went, I messaged you saying, because I benched Haaland, I was trying to estimate what his effective ownership would be. Because even though I benched him and I knew he was going to be benched, I still had a bad feeling he'd come on and probably do quite a lot of damage. I estimated his effective ownership would be about 140, 150%, obviously taking captaincy into account. It was 180% at my rank.
Yep.
Which just goes to show how few people were able to react to the news. Because if everyone knew at my rank, he would have been down at best at 100%, probably a bit lower. It does feel really unfair. It feels a bit dirty being able to react to the news. But also at the same time, if you see the news, you can't not react to it.
Exactly.
I really wish there was a universe where this could just stop happening and level the playing field. But I mean, we've talked about it on this pod quite a lot. What is the solution here? Like, move the deadline 24 hours before? That's not going to work. There will still be leaks. They just won't be quite as legitimate and trustworthy. You will still react to some news. And if you moved it to first kickoff, it would have been the same problem this week. We would have still got the early leak on Man City, and it would have been the exact same issue all over again. So I don't know. Is there a solution to this?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like we've, as you kind of mentioned, discussed it a lot. Like, move it back to the night before. Well, what happens if there's press conferences? Because it's a over Christmas, like, it's staggered, and you end up with a press conference when the games are ongoing. So, like, you missed a bit of legitimate news.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem to work for me. It'll run to all sorts of issues. Forward to deadline 1, as you say, you'd end up with, if there's a 12:30 deadline, you're going to end up with all the 3 PMs, making things even worse because there'll be all sorts of fake ITKs out there providing all sorts of nonsense. It's worth noting that Elite Syrian, who are also run by ISM, so the same people who make FPL, have the deadline right at the first game. So it's not kind of outside of their tech remit or their tech stack to actually do that, and they do it. Fantasy Bundesliga also does that. The very kind of the kickoff of the first game, that is when the deadline actually passes. I don't know after. And then we're in the time zone that's affected, and I've got sympathy for people who obviously aren't in the time zone. At the same time, I do think there's a lot of disingenuousness about people who do come on and go, "Oh yeah, well, it's lucky that you guys can wake up. You're choosing to play Fantasy Premier League, which is based in the UK. I mean, that is, you've made your choice to play this game. That's kind of something that you are going to have to bear in mind, unfortunately." I've gotten to the point over time that this is kind of the least worst solution as it stands.
Yeah.
If they move towards deadline one, kind of, I could see some credence in that. I think the day before, maybe like the evening before, so the midnight 1 a.m. the day before the first game of the weekend, maybe, but I think it has the same issues where there could be kept press conferences the next day. I don't know. Maybe that kind of works the best. I think it's just worth noting overall, this is probably the first time this season a leak of this scale, this magnitude has actually happened. And I think for a lot of people, it kind of scratches a few sort of old wounds and old itches surrounding this, not having the full sort of picture and feeling like, you're outside of the circle of knowledge and all this sort of thing. That people always want to feel like they're in the know. And if you do feel like, other people are getting privileged information you're not, or you've missed out due to fully legitimate reasons, I think that can be kind of quite annoying to a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, totally get it. It was absolutely crazy for a short 10-minute burst, but what a time to feel alive, eh?
Well, it was exciting, let's put it that way. If you were awake and you were able to react to the news, there are two ways it could go, because even though we had the news that Haaland and Foden were going to be benched, or, well, to be fair, we didn't even know that they were going to be benched. The actual post is on our YouTube right now. Haaland and Foden are not starting. So we didn't technically know they were even in the squad. I think it was fair to assume they would be. But the reaction in that 10 minutes is still not without risk. Like, between us, were messaging and we both decided between ourselves to bench Haaland. As soon as the deadline went, I was like, that is the worst decision I've ever made. Like, I already regret that decision, because if he has even 30 minutes against Wolves, that could be really painful. Same goes for Foden. Luckily, it was fine and we got away with it. But I'm still not completely sure it was a great decision to do that. And when you're playing on instinct and you've only got 10 minutes to react to these kind of things, it does open you up to a load of incorrect calls that, because you're using your gut, you're just kind of winging it. And the first thing, and I'll walk through my transfer plans in a minute when we get to my team, but the first thing I thought was, okay, Foden's not starting. Who do I definitely want long-term? Bruno Fernandes. I couldn't afford him in one free transfer, so I needed to make another move. Those of you who were able to just do Foden to Bruno, probably a bit more simple, but I needed to downgrade someone, and we'll come on to who I downgraded in a minute, and I kind of got away with it. But again, as soon as the deadline went, I was like, why on earth have I done that? Like, if I'd given myself 24 hours with this news to make that decision, I don't think I would have made the same decision. So yeah, we were playing on instinct for 10 minutes, and it was a lot of fun for that. It made me feel alive. It was great. But at the same time, as soon as the deadline went, I was full of regret, and I think I've gotten away with it, but I don't think my decision making was any better. Like, it just got a bit lucky.
Yeah, no. So what did we actually do then? So I saw the leak, and obviously there was a leak before that as well. So there was, I think you sent it to me when I was in the car, and the console read your text for me actually.
Oh yeah,
that Ekatike was starting, and I think that primed me to do Ekatike over Thiago, because I was thinking, oh, you know what, like that game could really go off, and that was obviously more frustration, but luckily no harm done. It was a him or Thiago that I was literally tossing the armband between the two of them right until the deadline. And yeah, Bruno in for Foden was moved up a week just because there was no one else I was particularly kind of interested in at that moment. And I guess the main thing here was that, another week, another 8 points are benched. So there was a moment when Anderson was on the pitch. There was a moment when Chow was on the pitch. There was a moment when O'Reilly was on the pitch. It was all kind of moving around on my screen towards the end. And I don't know. I kind of did the opposite of what I did last week. So I played the defender who was in a conflict with one of my players, whereas last week I didn't do that, and I've had the same result of like a 7-8 point swing, which would have got me a green arrow. So yeah, but that's really annoying. But I'm going to give myself a lot of leeway this week, because it clearly wasn't a calm, collected decision-making process like I normally try to inhabit when I'm making choices at the moment. So 37 overall. Harry Wilson, unstoppable. Morgan Rogers, another DEFCON, and an assist. Bruno with an assist tonight. O'Reilly, God, that was a bit of an Anorak's roller coaster, wasn't it? So on 11 DEFCON after the game, went down to 10, then down to 9, and I think it's the right decision to give him 9, because there was like a final block which they'd given to him, which actually came off Gahey, if you look at the footage. So yeah, 37. The safety for me is 41. So you need 4 points. I've got Tarko tomorrow. Tarko does get DEFCON. So hopefully if I get DEFCONs, I'm probably in with a green arrow or a grey arrow or something like that. But yeah, 3 small reds in a row. If it doesn't work out, just 50-50 not going my way, but it's very close. I mean, it kind of is what it is. And I don't think I'm going to fall too far. Kind of hovering around where I want to be. And if I'd have kind of got the last 2 50-50s right, I'd be probably about kind of 80k, which is probably, the sum of those 50-50s. So kind of 6-7 points, 8 or 9 points better off, something like that. So probably maybe not bottling it as much as my actual football team is. But, speaking to a Saints fan, I can't really complain too much, can
I? No, you cannot. Yeah, I mean, we bottled it again today. But at least we didn't lose to Pompey, I suppose. That's something. Okay, over to my team. So yeah, obviously similar news that we were reacting to. I did have 2 free transfers to play around with, and same conclusion as you. I wanted to switch Foden to Bruno, knowing that if there was one midfielder I was absolutely sure about, it would be Bruno Fernandes. Even if this week the fixture was not ideal, it just still felt like a transfer that I can just bring forward because I was going to make it next week anyway. And the other midfielders I was picking between, I just don't, or didn't at the time, feel like I had exactly the information I needed to make a really logical, wise choice on which one to pick. So I went with Bruno Fernandes. I couldn't afford him in 1 free transfer. So that last 10 minutes was basically a scramble to figure out where I'm going to find the money. So there were, I think, 3 players that initially came to mind as players that I might be able to downgrade. One was Saka, probably down to Rice, but I was so confident that he would start against Man United and as such makes him just as good as Rice for that game week at least. And also I ended up captaining Saka. So I was confident enough to be like, he is my captain this week. With that in mind, I wasn't going to sell him. So kept him. Ekatike up top was another player that I could downgrade. Those of you who are watching YouTube know what I did there. And then the final player was Szoboszlai, who I could have downgraded to Harry Wilson, was probably going to be the player that I went to. I mean, I don't know why I went with selling Ekatike, because there was no real logical reason to do it. I just felt more sure that Thiago was the guy I wanted up front, like long term, than Ekatike versus Szoboszlai against Harry Wilson, for instance. I definitely want to get rid of Szoboszlai in the next few game weeks, but when I was looking around at which options I was picking from, I just wasn't as completely certain on which player I was going to pick as I would have been with Ekatike to Thiago. Thiago was undoubtedly the striker that I wanted, even if the fixtures weren't that great. After Nottingham Forest, I thought Forest is a good game. After the next 2, again, it's a player that I will want to own long term. So I went with Thiago, saved the money. I've got 1.1 in the bank now, and thank God I held on to Szoboszlai.
Yep.
Like, honestly, I've been counting my lucky stars because it could have gone the other way in the 10 minutes. It really, really could have. And obviously, Harry Wilson did very well himself, so it wouldn't have punished me massively. But I feel a lot better for seeing Szoboszlai in my team with 13 points. And 49 overall, up to about, I mean, it says 266 on the screen. It's more like 280, I think, after the auto subs come in. And we're into game week 24 now. I still haven't had a game week rank of under 1 million all season. All season. So maybe one day soon. But Anderson, 8 points. Everyone else in my defense and goalkeeper all got 1. Midfield, all of them except Saka, my captain, returned. So
Lovely.
Anderson with 5, Rogers 8, Fernandez at 5, Szoboszlai 13. And I ended up in a 4-5-1 with Thiago up top, who I didn't even own 10 minutes before the deadline. Haaland on the bench, which is just making me laugh as I say it. Hall also benched for 3 points. What a crazy, crazy week, man.
I mean, it is what it is, which is the most sort of banal thing you can say. But it really, I mean, I was just so happy for you when Szoboszlai scored the free kick. I thought of you immediately. I'm not the sort of person who, well, for most people in the FPL community, I'm just like, oh, screw them. But for you and a couple other people, I do genuinely kind of feel very happy on your behalf when things go well. And I was just like, yeah, come on, Sam, that's great. Obviously, I was really hoping that the XTK would do something later on, but I was obviously that's it's good to have that initial springboard, isn't it? Because you've been feeling like a lot of 50-50-50s haven't been going your way, and finally having them go your way, hopefully that's going to just lead you down a path where you can feel a little bit more assured in your decision making. I don't know, it's just the little things that do sometimes lead you down into form. Am I going to say? Can you be a FPL manager? I'm not even sure. But undeniably over Christmas, even though it was kind of by mistake, I did feel kind of just quite serene in my decision making, which really helped everything else.
It is weird how that happens. Like all of a sudden, and again, it shouldn't impact my decision making or how confident I am, but the fact that Szoboszlai even bagged that free kick goal, all of a sudden I'm looking at my team and I'm thinking, okay, I know what I'm doing. I can keep calm. I'm on the right track. Everything's going to work out. But that's all just perspective. Like he just happened to bag a free kick goal, which could happen any week. And even last week, if he'd bagged the penalty goal, I would have been feeling better, but he didn't. So I felt awful. It's just so weird how tiny, tiny margins in this game can completely change your confidence, completely change your mood. Yeah. I just got a bit lucky this week. And look, it's only 49 points. It's not like I've got a great game week rank. I think it's like a 2.5 million game week rank, to be honest. So it's not a great one, but compared to a lot of people in the community, especially in the upper tiers, who unfortunately weren't able to react to the Haaland news or the Foden news, Ekatike as well came out after the deadline. I do feel like I've caught a bit of a break. And although I've used 2 of my free transfers, I do feel like I'm in a better position going into game week 24, which, I just feel very grateful for. I feel lucky, and I've gotten away with one. And what more can I say?
Yeah, you've not felt lucky for quite a while in FPL. I'm sure in your actual life, I'm sure you feel that all the time. But so long may it continue, is what I say. So main thing this week, obviously we've spoken a lot about the fixture swings just to kind of start to get people thinking about it. And last week we did to the fixtures and everything like that. General sort of overview, I suppose, of that was at Arsenal, Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, sort of, Chelsea, Palace, Fulham, Liverpool, Man City, and Man United are the teams that do come into a bit of a fixture between 24 and 31. Saying 31 is kind of the end point, just because that's kind of the mainstream, the majority wildcard we think at the moment, and also takes in a probable potential double game week 26 for Arsenal and Wolves as well, by the way. So 24 and 27 and 28 and 31 do split into 2, as we spoke about last week. So the first kind of 4, you've got Chelsea, who have got some quite good fixtures in there. Palace have got a very nice 26-27. And Arsenal have got the double alongside a home game against Sunderland, whose solidity doesn't seem to be as strong without our old boy Xhaka in a double. And on the other hand, you've got Liverpool coming to a good set of fixtures from 28 to 31, as do likes of Fulham. Man United, we said last week, a bit of the golden goose, just because they've got their two worst fixtures out of the way now. City and Arsenal are both gone, and that's kind of it for them for the rest of the year. All kind of quite rosy. And unlike Villa, who are the other team who don't have those two fixtures until the very end, 37 and 38, they don't have any other commitments apart from the league. And Carrick is at the wheel. I am very sad to say. Actually, no, please keep him in charge, guys. But yeah, I suppose that leads us nicely into thinking about kind of the template, I guess, going forward. What's that going to look like? We did this, I can't remember, I think we did this quite a while back, didn't we? And I think it was quite a useful exercise just to kind of just optimize the planning a little bit and try to home in on the individuals that maybe we should be looking at going forward. And a really nice little feature on the app for Live FPL is that they have this little, there's a template tab where you can see all the kind of the highest owned players out there. But I just thought that was really interesting to just look at and springboard the discussion of today, because I think this is going to change over time. And some bits are going to stay as they are, but other bits are going to move because of it. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of just maybe predict now where we might think it might go by the end of this period, because it's nicely sort of bookended by wildcards, or you could be wildcarding now into this swing. So we'll naturally talk about what maybe a wildcard team might look like if you're wildcarding now. But that kind of template, it does look like one you could probably broadly guess, doesn't it, Sam?
Yeah, at the moment it feels like the wildcards that are being moved into this game week are quite easy to pick. 24 feels like quite a nice fixture swing. We've obviously got the fixtures on screen here, and there are a number of teams where you can quite easily identify which players you would pick from them. I think Arsenal is the caveat there, where there are probably 4, maybe 5 players where you'd be picking between. And depending which 3 of those players that you're happy with, that the other pieces kind of fall into place. So other players might fall out of your wildcard draft and out of the template based on which other Arsenal picks that you go with. Maybe to some extent Man City as well, although with Foden and Cherky both kind of disappearing recently, there are now probably only 3, maybe 4 at a push Man City players that are going to be popular. So Haaland, Semenyo looks like he's going to be pretty template heavy over the next few weeks, and Gahey all of a sudden as well. So 2 Man City signings plus Haaland look like they might be popular. They've not got the best few fixtures over the next 4, but then after that, Leeds, Nottingham Forest, West Ham, followed by a potential blank, of course, but you can probably offload by then. So I think the template feels quite strong today, and it might feel that way after the little Chelsea switch, once people have loaded up on them, and maybe Man United over the next few game weeks. And then I think, as you rightly identified, when we switch between 27 and 28, we might all of a sudden see Chelsea disappearing from the template. Man United might not be quite so popular given their run after 27. And of course, by that point, we'll know which teams are blanking in game week 31. And that will have quite a lot to say to the template as well. So could be a few interesting weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if everyone kind of knows the players that are going to be popular over the next 4 weeks. But then in another 4 weeks, we might all be running low on transfers and the template might shift yet again and people might be left scrambling, which could be the really interesting point, I think.
Oh, I'm already scrambling, Sam. There's already so many things I want to do, but I don't feel like I quite want to wildcard yet. I feel like there's a lot more impact to do it. And I think the team, if the last couple of weeks have been, as you said to me off before we started, the last couple of weeks have been low scoring. And I think that perhaps might be worth just ruminating on a little bit if you are hovering over the panic button and you aren't kind of, your rank is okay. I mean, as we said a couple of weeks ago that like if you're kind of 500, 600, 700k or below that, and you don't feel like your season's going anywhere and you want to kind of do something to try to feel alive again and perhaps try to gain some points quickly, then totally get it if you're going for 24 wildcard, because there are there's lots of good teams to target. If you look at this sort of template to get into it, starting in nets. I mean, Raya's the top goalkeeper at the moment, with Sanchez kind of the backup. Raya with the 32% EO, in the top 100k. I suppose for the next 4, Sanchez would probably be a good one. The ubiquitous Dubravka, I think, is obviously missing in this, but he'll be the cheapest sort of alternative. If you're looking for a keeper now, part of me would kind of just be thinking, just shove Pickford in and forget about it, but he's so expensive, isn't he? And goalkeepers are so meh. Like at 4.9, Sanchez, stick him in and just leave him there for the rest of the year. Chelsea have got a decent defence, and that could be all right. I mean, that kind of it kind of feels like one of those sort of zero-sum games at the moment where you're looking at it and just thinking, well, if I've got to have a goalkeeper, then surely it should be someone from one of the top kind of 5 or 6 defenses that look all right. Well, that said, I remember last week saying, talk about data in a minute because it's a bit sad what's happened, but I remember saying last week that Chelsea's defense actually wasn't as good as I thought it was, kind of on paper. And oh god, it's just one of those. I think you do goalkeeper last, right, and you do everything else first.
Yeah, agreed. I think goalkeeper should be the least of your worries on a wild card, but it is important to get it right, of course. But there's less impact generally across the board between like the highest and lowest scoring goalkeepers. There's not that much of a swing usually. There obviously are exceptions versus the best and worst defenders. There's a bigger swing there. Midfielders as well. There's like more upside to chase in all of those positions. I think if I was on a wild card, I'd just shove Pickford in, honestly. And there are 2 game weeks. I think it's game week 28 and 30. They go away to Newcastle and Arsenal, and Dubravka those weeks. I think it's Brentford and Bournemouth both at home. Fine. Like, other than that, I think Pickford will just keep clean sheets in the weeks that you would least expect it, get a few save points. He'll be up there at the end of the season. It all comes down to whether or not you want to use the extra 0.7 million saving elsewhere if you went with Sanchez. I think it's 0.7. I haven't actually checked. But I mean, Sanchez is great. That's absolutely fine. All I would say is it's under a new manager, new system, and this new system does tend to favor a bit of a sweeper keeper. And Jorgensen played in the Champions League. Is it possible that maybe Sanchez gets dropped at some point? It's very unlikely, but it is more likely than it would be with Pickford. So I think, honestly, I'll just go with Pickford because season after season, he just ends up the top scoring keeper. For that extra 0.7, I quite like that guarantee. It's a bit like why I like Elliot Anderson. I just like the drip feed of 4 or 5 pointers. I know that I can just take it to the bank, even in weeks where you least expect it. Pickford will just kind of drip feed those in. Whereas Sanchez, he might get an 11-pointer, but it'll be away against Arsenal when you least expect it. And you might even bench him that week for Dubravka. So unless you've got real conviction in just starting him week in, week out, I feel like you might miss the halls there.
It is insane. Like Everton, I'm sure I saw this earlier on, like away from home, particularly this year. So maybe in those games that you're referencing where you get clean sheet out of nowhere, they've only conceded 10 goals away from home this year. Like Arsenal, for reference, are the best away from home in terms of goals conceded, which is 9. They're overperforming their expected goals conceded by 8, rounded up, which is absolutely wild. According to Understat, this is, which is what we've got to use now. And I think I'd be very tempted to do that. But so do it last and look at defense first. So I think Gabriel, Timber, I think they're going to stick around. I think Chalobah, who is in the template team, just about on 23%. There has been a lot of sort of defense seems to have become the place where you are getting differential points actually for the last little while. You know, for things like having Tarkovsky, Chow, like all those sorts of goals and things. I mean, I think I'd have been dead and buried, by the way, if that Martinez goal was given to Timber earlier on today. I was very glad.
He definitely touched that. Just saying, he definitely.
No, he didn't. Yeah, I think that would very strongly depend on my ownership in FPL. So I think Gabriel, Timber, Chalobah, you'll be fine to chuck in, but I don't know. Like Gahey, I think Tarkovsky probably won't stay there for too long. After Everton's run's been very, very good, or good enough, but I don't think he's going to last for me, at least after wild card. And you've got a few players like we're going to talk about Dorgu in a bit, putting their hands up, and there's always going to be kind of cheap defenders. I think it's worth noting, and it's been kind of mentioned in the chat as well, that without Xhaka, Sunderland seem to have suddenly just had a bit of a tough time of it, and they do have Arsenal and Liverpool coming up 25 and 26, but their end of kind of season running is very good. Sunderland, and the defenders still are cheap. So I think in terms of enablers, if we're assuming that Gabriel, Timber, and Chalobah are going to stick around, that's kind of where we're looking, isn't it? At those sorts of guys, maybe a Richards as well, who defender who never scores gets a goal to wipe out a Chelsea clean sheet, which I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to be not very happy about. But maybe he could be one. If you're wildcarding now, you'd be happy to stick him with 26, 27, still at 4.4. End of the season is quite rough for Palace, but I mean, at 4.4, he'd be like an Anderson sort of thing where he'd just kind of be first bench quite comfortably a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. Gabriel and Timber will probably stick around in the template. Chalobah will be really popular as a player I'm looking at. And then after that, it's 4 and 5. I think Sunderland defence is still cheap enough generally, like an Alderete at 4.1, not starting every week, but you play him in the nice home games. Xhaka was out yesterday, but I don't think it's meant to be a long-term thing. So hopefully that strengthens them. They've obviously had players off at AFCON that, again, are back now. Hopefully they're a bit stronger for that. I think Sunderland is a funny one because we kind of have generally across the community overreacted in both ways across the season. We saw them doing really well and we overreacted to the point where these guys are invincible. They're going to keep a clean sheet every single week when the defensive data was solid, but not outlandishly good. It's not really dipped so far that we should be almost laughing at them and saying, what are you doing in our teams? It's dipped a bit. And maybe there's just been a bit of correction with the underlying data and they're still okay. Like they're mid-table defense. They're still 4.5. I think Mukiele's 4.5. You've got Alderete at 4.1. I think it's fine as a fifth defender. With Crystal Palace, I'd like Richards. If I was wildcarding, he would be there it would be between him and Anderson, as it has been most of the season, between those two 4.5 options. I think I'd probably still favour Anderson. And the reason I say that is, although Palace have got some good fixtures between now and game week 30, I'm not sure Richards is the one I'd want. Like, I think I'd still prefer Lacroix or definitely Munoz at a bit more of an expensive price. And I think I'd try and find a way to maybe squeeze in Munoz over Richards. Richards is fine, but at 4.4, he got the goal today, but I don't think we're going to see many more of those this season. And whereas Munoz is, you're constantly on the cusp of a big haul and it keeps you in the game. Even if you're having a nightmare, Munoz could save you. Richards isn't going to do that all that often. Obviously, it's more expensive. It's difficult to do, but I would try to find the money for Munoz if you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. So midfield then. So Saka's not in it at the moment, which is quite. Oh, he is in it. Sorry. So Saka, Rice, Semenyo, Rogers, and Wilson. Obviously, Enzo I think is knocking at the door a little bit, but Wilson's been one of those players who I got a bit of 5.3 a little while ago and just been kind of my star kind of differential pick over the last little while. Helped a lot by the fact that he's not liked by analytics, similar to Rogers. I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it, with that? Because we'll talk about Semenyo in a bit as well. I think that he's like a perfectly fine get. It's just there's a couple of names which are obviously missing from that. One being Bruno Fernandes, who is going to be in everyone's team. And noticed by Nobby in the chat that he's enjoyed 2 price rises in a row. So we're not kind of, I think he will be enjoying 2 price rises in a row by the time you guys listen to this. So he won't. He's going to be one of those players who's going to be kind of in basically every team. Maybe the 5 points we got tonight are going to be quite big. And yeah, Bumo, I think is going to be an interesting one too. And Enzo, I should probably mention. So yeah, I think that midfield, but we might see a few kind of moves and shakers there a little bit. Rogers sticking around, Bruno coming in. And I think if you're, as you said earlier on in terms of Arsenal, if you've got your Rice, I think he does stay. Maybe by the time we get to 26, maybe a movement back to Saka because the minutes may increase due to the loss today over that 26. But yeah, it's I think that there's definitely kind of some scope for that to move around, isn't there?
Yeah, I think with Saka for me, because I've already got him, it's hope that they get double game week 26. After that, I have very little interest at the moment. He's been poor recently. I really hope that he can finally pay off. Obviously, I captained him this week. It didn't go well. But I think the minutes against Leeds will be good because he'll get rested midweek. I think Sunderland will be probably fine. And then game week 26, if they do double, they'll have the Wigan FA Cup game between the first and the second game. It just seems so obvious. I mean, obvious. It could go the other way, but you think it would be Saka starting Brentford, Madueke in the midweek, and then Saka starting Wolves. You would think. And then again, Spurs after that. Can you imagine Saka getting benched against Spurs? That would just be crazy. So I think he will. I mean, he's barely even hanging on in the template now, let alone in a few game weeks' time. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a little resurgence if they do get double game week 26, given that I think by the time we get there, if for whatever reason, Arsenal haven't kept clean sheets in the last two games, 24-25 against Leeds and Sunderland, a lot of people are saying, oh, if double game week 26 happens, Gabriel captain easy. 2 clean sheet wipeouts in the next 2 game weeks, and I think no one goes with Gabriel. I think everyone just gets scared of it and are reminded of the weaknesses of captaining a defender, because it can go the other way. He's just happened to be in very good form recently and happened to score a few goals as well, which obviously helps. That won't always be the case. So I wonder if we get to game week 26 and Saka gets a little bit of a resurgence, if the minutes look like they'll be solid. But again, that all depends on Arsenal's form in the next 2. Outside of that, I mean, Rice is solid as a rock. I don't really see that ownership shifting too much over the next few game weeks. What I'd be interested to see if a Semenyo hangs around in the template. He's at 40-ish% now, but we need to find space for Mbermo, Enzo, like you said. Bruno Fernandes hasn't quite made it into the template here. I just wonder whose chunk of ownership comes down to bring those players into it, because I think by the time we get to game week 26, 27, they will all be near enough for template. And Mbermo, maybe not for sure, given that his minutes haven't been perfect since Carrick came in, 70-minute subs both times, but he'll be popular-ish at least. So yeah, I think Semenyo is one that might drop a little bit. Saka, if they don't get the double game week, but I think we're going to see 8 or 9 midfielders at around 30 or 40% effective ownership, and then it's which 5 you're going to pick.
Yeah, choice is good for the game. Choice is also obviously devastatingly worrying when you reload live FPL, when you're like, oh my goodness, this guy's at 40%. I hear what you're saying about Semenyo. I just think it's going to take, because we're City are on the list as a team with fixture swings, and I think it's going to take someone quite bold to do it and remove someone like Semenyo. So maybe that's an opportunity then. And if someone does have, in your mini league has Semenyo below you or someone that you're chasing, and then you can take that on rather than covering it. I think that's kind of what that represents, and there's going to be a lot of, hopefully, diversity there, and that's what we've been crying out for. I mean, the irony before last week was that there were lots of kind of threads online saying FPL gotten boring. Well, if you want, may you live in interesting times, I guess. And so here we are. And I think that'd be really cool to see that these things do revolve around a little bit. I feel like Harry Wilson, and also to some extent Rodgers, but I think Rodgers probably is going to be a no sell for a lot of people all the way. That's why I bought him early, and why you bought him early all the way until kind of 37. I think he'll probably stay through wild card. A player like Harry Wilson, probably we may turn around and see him eventually kind of start to come out of a lot of teams, but he's still in the fixture swing, and he's kind of in the purple patch of his life. 10 points this week off an XG of 0.07, I think it was. And so it continues to really hurt the analytics people. But I mean, at the price I paid, I mean, he's not going anywhere for me. And I'm sure if you kind of have owned Wilson for a while, he's not going anywhere either. So I think maybe it's kind of 2 spots, maybe even 1, if you think Bruno, Rodgers, and Arsenal. Yeah, maybe it's 2 spots around that are going to be the main source of differentiation. And we may even see someone else emerge from the ashes that we don't even know now. And yeah, I'm quite excited for that. I hope that's going to be a thing going forward. I'm just glad that Bruno Guimaraes isn't in it anymore, Sam. I'm glad that we're safe from Bruno Guimaraes now. I hope anyway.
Yeah, we've been marked safe for now.
Yeah, just for the moment. And up front, well, I mean, yeah, forwards are rubbish, aren't they? I mean, there goes Pricey off playing his 4-5-1. Doesn't give a crap about the forwards anymore. Sell them all, he says.
Bench Haaland, no problem.
Yeah. Not going to do that again, are we? So I see Haaland, see Thiago, both sticking around for a lot of people. I think that third forward, just because of the facts of what we've said about there being so many midfielders who are going to be in the mix, that third forward basically becomes a double game week opportunity or a 31 playing player opportunity in the mould of Krupi. I suspect it'll be Matthias Mane for a lot of people up to wildcard though.
Yeah, I mean, even if they do get a double game week, it's not a good double game week. I think it's Forest and Arsenal if it happens. So, given the XG, given his positioning in the Wolves team, he's not playing up front. I would be tempted to look the other way and look at Krupi. Honestly, there's not a zero chance that he's on penalties now with Tavernier also out of the squad. I think it would be Evan Nilsson, but Krupi does probably put his hand up in those scenarios, so we'll see. And like you said, playable in 31. So I think it's a conversation to be had. The minutes aren't as good as Mane's, but it's certainly in the mix. I would have a look at both of them. I've got GU at the moment, so I would be looking at around game week 26, maybe upgrading him to a playing forward. If I did go with Mane. So they're both in the conversation. I think my gut instinct is to go with the player that has the data and therefore the better chance of continuing to repeat the goals that he's already scored. But Mane might have the double. So it's not the best double. And to be fair, also, the other thing, if you are looking at wildcarding later in game week 32, I think it's probably a given that most of us have at least 2, probably 3 Arsenal at that point. If Mane's in there as well, that's 4 players that would blank in game week 31. And if it's, let's say, City and Crystal Palace that also blank that game week, you probably have Haaland. You might have a Crystal Palace player hanging around after game week 26 where they go into Burnley, Wolves, Man United, Spurs, Leeds. So you might have a Palace player in there. You might have a second City. You could be in a spot of bother if you also have Mane in there as well. So maybe there's an argument for just playing it more conservatively, sticking with Krupi and giving yourself a playing player in game week 31. I can see it both ways.
Yeah. I think it's going to just be a bit immaterial almost, as I said last week, in terms of that kind of third forward slot. Handy to have a body in 31, but if the blank does fall then, but I don't think it's going to be the be all and end all. And the fixture isn't great for Krupi anyway. So, well, it's United at home, but United by then are going to be a lean, mean grilling machine, aren't they? So I think that it probably won't be the best. And who knows what Bournemouth are going to do in the transfer market. I saw they're signing Ryan from Brazil, who's a bit of a foot manager pick if anybody does want to look into that. But yeah, I mean, I think probably we're looking at quite a lot of movement then in the template overall to summarise. I suspect that the goalkeepers are just going to goalkeep, just whatever, just whatever. Double Arsenal defence sticks around, and it will be kind of the third or fourth defender where we might see a slight bit of interchangeability, depending on how we approach Chelsea, which we'll speak about in a minute. In midfield, you've got Rice or Saka, or Saka, depending on how you go. I suspect Rodgers, Bruno, and then if you do own Wilson, I expect he'll stick around to you wild cards. Other than that, you've probably got 2 slots to attack there. And as Sam said earlier on, you've got like a whole smorgasbord of potential options who do come in. And I think that's going to be where the most exciting thing is, because up front you've got Haaland, Thiago, and the cheapie. I think that's kind of how the template will look, and it will just be kind of maybe those midfield picks. So for me, I'm looking at probably adding Bumo to Bruno very soon, because I think that's the way I want to play it, because FPL wise I think that's manna from heaven to have a player like that, who is going to start, I know the minutes have been pretty poor. I was speaking about it. Well, not pretty poor, but it's kind of 70, 80. We'll speak about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of setting up there in a way which is going to help is going to be good. I think captaincy is quite an interesting one just before we move on from this, Sam, because obviously we don't. I think that it's fair to say that Palmer is going to be too much of a stretch to go towards at the moment, even though Liverpool are included in this fixture swing. There isn't quite that kind of feeling that Salah's the one. But by the time we get to game of 28, 29, when they've got Wolves, West Ham at home and Wolves away, maybe we'll be looking at him thinking, yeah, you know what, that could be a really kind of short-term impactful pick. I mean, hopefully there's going to be some movement going forward. I think maybe not this week because of Spurs. Because of Haaland having Spurs and Bruno having Fulham. Most people are going to be looking at Haaland, but the week after that, where Haaland goes to Liverpool and then you've got Man United away at West Ham, maybe we're going to see sooner rather than later some erosion of that massive Haaland EO at captaincy.
I don't think we're far away. I think Bruno and his consistency is going to start playing on people's minds quite a lot. And it's playing on my mind, to be completely honest, because Haaland, it does feel like he's got more of an explosion in him in terms of, okay, he can go and bag a hat trick. Bruno is unlikely to ever really do that. He might grab a goal and an assist and DEFCON and get all of those different routes to points all come in all at once. But that feels less likely than Haaland just getting at least a brace, maybe a hat trick. We know what he's capable of. But Haaland is so up and down at the moment, and it doesn't feel like City are playing to his strengths necessarily. And actually, weirdly, the Wolves game, although it was definitely 100% just about resting Haaland to keep him ready for the following games, I think they were able to almost prove that there is a plan B there, that Marmoush can play through the centre, that they can use Semenyo to drift inside and get more shots away. I don't know how many shots exactly he took that game week, but I'm willing to bet it was quite a few. And he looked almost as a shadow striker off of Marmoush, and that worked really quite well. I'm not saying that in any way to scare off anyone owning Haaland, because he will continue to start. But I just wonder if the way that City are setting up at the moment plays into Haaland's strengths the same way that it did 7 or 8 game weeks ago. And I wonder if they're transforming the system slightly to maybe bring other people into play a little bit more. Now that they've got those weapons in their arsenal, they've got Marmoush, they've got Semenyo, they've got Doku, they've got players that can also score goals. So yeah, I just wonder. And when Bruno is just, his floor just feels so high now, whether it's DEFCON, whether it's a goal, whether it's assist, whether it's all of those different things added together, I think you're always in the game with him. And now that he's playing in a more advanced role and Man United look like they're getting back to where you'd expect them to be historically, they've got good enough fixtures to take on Haaland, I think. I am tempted, genuinely, in all of the next 3 game weeks, I am tempted to have a look at Bruno. No one else really, but Bruno is on my mind.
I think Dodd's Tottenham. Although there's
Fulham at home.
We'll talk about it in captains.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Let's leave it for that. Right. Moving on to some players now. Then thanks for that, Sam. I think that was interesting to see if our predictions come true. Data. So sad about that. As a quick aside, it seems like FBref is RIP, and they've been utterly decimated, and it's due to FIFA's greed, essentially, trying to preserve its gambling partnerships, which is absolutely sickening. A really bad day for the democratization of football data. I know it doesn't affect a lot of people, but it does affect nerds like me who use FBref for basically everything for the pod and for just general reference. And it's really sad that now data is either behind paywalls or it's a homebrew. And homebrews are fine. So I think we'll, from now on, use Understat. Do have the option of using Hub or Scout, but I feel like it's fairest to use a data site that we can all look at. Which I think is absolutely fine. Might mean the data we've been mentioning wobbles a little. We already saw that a little bit last week, if anyone does care as much as I do about these things. But hey, but tonight with the game week in progress, bitty updating, and the fact that I've had very little time because I had to put a toddler to bed, pitfalls of recording on Sunday night. I've only put in a rough color coding on YouTube where they should be based on what I remember from FBref and Game Week 22. So it should be about right. Sorry for any errors. Won't always be this way. Unless you prefer it over numbers, do let us know if you prefer colors over numbers. My toddler does, so maybe you do too. In terms of these guys, let's so United, obviously the big talking point, for obvious reasons. We've spoken about Bruno a little bit. Mins are an issue, but maybe post AFCON conditioning's being managed a bit. Sam, he's also playing a 9, which is slightly different. I do think he keeps playing, but Cunha has put his hand up. United fan and friend of the pod, Neil, thinks he and Ahmad, Cunha and Ahmad, that is, are probably be duking it out a little bit for that extra slot in the attack. I think Bruno kind of is always going to be in the mix, and there's going to be no reason to rest him and so on and so forth. And I just feel like he is the player that I want to pair with Bruno going forward. In terms of the underlying data, I think he has obviously missed quite a lot just due to AFCON and things like that, but he's still doing okay in terms of everything, in terms of the underlying per 90 data, that is. Still kind of recording according to Understat. He's in the top 10, 0.62, so just around sort of the Enzo Fernandez, who we've been raving about, and in Ekitike, who again has been kind of pointed out as having very good per 90 data in terms of the underlying data per 90. So, I mean, yeah, we know Bruno's quality, and I just feel like he's one that at the price I want to just kind of put in at some point alongside Bruno. It's hard to say, isn't it? Bruno all the time. But I just feel like they are just such FPL gold, Man United.
They are.
My prediction, Sam. I feel like I'm going to be right. I'm going to be able to take this one home. That I was a genius and predicted both that Mo Salah would be rubbish this year, and also that Triple United would be a thing.
You literally did hear it first here. Yeah, I mean, Mbermo, I am very tempted. The only negative, I suppose, is we've seen him 2 game weeks now in the new system, and both times he's been brought off early. I think there's a massive slice of game state there in both cases because he was playing out of position. I don't know if he'll continue to play specifically in that position in the games coming, because I think they set up in a very specific way for both Arsenal and Man City, and Mbermo was used in that way because of the opposition and because of the game state, and also brought off early again because of the opposition, because of the game state. So I think he's a really good pick. I just, minus the penalties, I just wonder whether he's that much better than, say, Enzo over the next few. And maybe Rodgers as well. That would be my only question. Maybe Semenyo should also be in there as well, to be fair. I basically, what I'm trying to say poorly is that second or third midfielder spot after an Arsenal player and after Bruno, because I think most of us are going to have a combination of those two. That third spot is very much up for debate between Mbermo, Semenyo, Enzo, Rodgers. You might be able to get 2 of them, but in most cases, I think quite a few of us will only be able to get 1. Mbermo's definitely in that mix for me. I just don't know for sure yet that he's worth the extra money over the other ones. So he's very much in my thinking. But it's how much do I need to sacrifice elsewhere over a Rodgers or over an Enzo, for example. And again, that's not to say I wouldn't go there myself. I might end up on him even this week because I do really like the player. I think a part of it for me is I need to keep reminding myself he's not on penalties this year. And last year, it's just a slightly different Mbermo. He's more talismanic at Brentford than he is here. Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't lose a lot though. Like, he's still the data is still very, very good, and he probably is still very good value for money.
Yeah, no, I think that would be maybe the way I go over Enzo, but
yeah, fair.
Obviously, it's a gamble knowing that Enzo is going to have really good fixtures over the next 4, but Bruno's got great fixtures to the end of the season, is where I look at it. But is there no doubles for them? Right, because of their being out of cups, or no, it might depend on their opposition, doesn't it?
It depends on the opposition.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't run them off entirely. So yeah, obviously that might change. But I do think that because he's likely to play these games. So whereas we've got loads of question marks over the Chelsea guys. I just feel like that's worth pursuing. But that harks back to your point earlier on, where you've got 5 midfield slots and you probably have 8 or 9 midfielders who could possibly be in those slots. So picking your poison. And yes, I've just noticed that Bumo is in at 9.2 on this. No, it should be 8.2, not 9.2. That's completely. That's what 1 million more expensive. Maybe I just value him more than you should.
That's
maybe
predictive. That's
yeah,
predictive.
yeah, exactly.
4 game weeks time, it'll be 9.2. The way the
4
price
game
rises
weeks.
are
You're being
working.
charitable. Maybe like 2 weeks if he scores against Fulham.
I still think there's that rule that you can't go up more than 3 times a week.
Oh no, screw it. No, it's all over
just
now.
Break it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, that rule is still very much in place in case someone starts worrying about not buying Bruno yet, because Bruno it will rise by 2, probably by 3 this week easily.
It'll be 14 million by game week 24 at this rate. Yeah,
probably. Dorgu, so he was holding his fight at the very end, apparently just cramped, but he was so advanced against us, and obviously scored a lovely little sumptuous finish, and hit one again probably about 2 minutes later. 4.3 million. I mean, if he does persist playing this role, it's going to be very hard to overlook that guy. Could be an absolute shoe-in for a lot of people. And as you mentioned, the fixtures are great for an awfully long time. Obviously, there's no data to speak of, but if you've got O'Reilly this week and you haven't really got any other moves to make, or you're kind of thinking, I want to make a defensive move, that's going to be hugely attractive to a lot of people. Not just, probably because he's done a goal, so he's a lot higher in people's estimations, but he's 5th overall in terms of transfers in this week. Dorgu, of all people, the Lecce buy suddenly come out of nowhere, becoming incredibly popular after 5, 15 and 8 over the last 3 game weeks. Interested, Sam?
Not yet. I think if you've got him, you're loving life, and you're undoubtedly playing him at home to Fulham. You're obviously very smug about all the points recently. That all very, very positive. I still would like to see Man United against a slightly weaker opponent where Carrick might be tempted to let loose a little bit and play all of the stars all at once. I just want to see what his mindset is for those kind of games. And in a way, it's a slight negative that Man United are out of all of the other competitions, because that might give us a sense of, if they were against a weaker opponent, how they might be setting up. If Dorgu still plays in that exact role against Fulham and he gets 85, 90 minutes in that match, I will become incredibly tempted. But I do still just wonder if there's a bit like what I said with Mbermo, a bit of game state, a little bit of, okay, we're measuring up the opponents and we're playing him intentionally because of who we're playing, giving ourselves obviously a player who's very good going forward, but also he's naturally a fullback. So he can also double up on Saka, for instance. So I'm not quite there yet. And I am, again, as we all know, I'm a quite cautious manager. I like to see things happen before I go there. But there is a good chance that he does start game week 24. He plays very advanced again, and he becomes a very good pick. I think the thing that's giving me slight comfort here is there is a risk that that doesn't happen. And even if it does, he's still going to be good value for money, even if he's at 4.6 million this time next week. So it's not going to spiral so far out of my control that I can't afford him this time next week. I would like game week 24 just to teach me whether or not he's going to continue in this exact role.
I just can't help but think, and I was being slightly kind of playing devil's avocado there. I can't help but think that you're right, that we'll end up seeing the front 4 basically being, well, where does Bruno fit? Bruno always plays, but where's Bruno fit in? We don't know. But Bumo, Bruno, Ahmad, and Cunha being the front 4 basically, and Sesko may be coming in somewhere, but yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was a bit of a moment in time with Dorgu, and sure, if he actually is injured and it wasn't cramp, but that's what Carrick said, then he's performed well enough to stay in the team. But I don't know, man. It's one of those, but I'm not going to be rushing to him right now, but can totally appreciate if you want to make a defensive transfer, do it. Sure. The fixture run's good enough. Just take a bit of a gamble on it, but it's one of those where within 2 or 3 weeks, he might be one of those players that we're not mentioning, and you're just kind of thinking, how do I get rid of this guy?
Yeah.
He does have that sort of smell whiff about him, unfortunately. But he was really end of last year looking quite decent in the Amarim system as well. So but it feels like Shaw's got that kind of solidity behind the left wing kind of pick, so that feels like that surely is eventually going to end up going to Cunha. So yeah, a bit of a dicey one there. On to Ollie Watkins. So I think Rodgers. So obviously didn't speak about Bruno because I think that's a bit of a given. Highest transfers in this week. Rodgers, I think, is probably again a bit of a given. If you don't own him, I wouldn't be kind of fretting about not owning him. But it might want just to bear in mind that eventually, by the time Game Week 27 rolls around and they've got Leeds and Wolves in short order. In fact, before that, they've got Brighton, and then before that, they've got Bournemouth. In fact, this week they've got Brentford. So Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, Leeds, and Wolves. Maybe you should be thinking about Rodgers a little bit. But if you're thinking about that, you do want to make a striker transfer this week. You do want to sell Akasike, but for whatever reason, you want to keep kind of a more expensive striker hanging around. Ollie Watkins, Sam, did a goal against Newcastle after a couple of misses, which is classic Ollie Watkins. Underlying data is still all right. Again, classic Ollie Watkins. And I mean, can't be kind of saying too much about that, except friend of the pod, Tammy Abraham, one of Nick's favourite players, looks like he may be returning to the Premier League, which may well impact Ollie Watkins. Ollie Watkins, one of those players that you can't just call Watkins. You've got to call him Ollie Watkins. That's just the law.
Well, now you've said that, I have to just call him Watkins because I have to, because I'm going to break the law. Look, he's a lot of money for a player that I can't guarantee he's going to get 90 minutes now. Like, Tammy Abraham's coming in for a reason. Emery always likes having two strikers. I think he's been personally offended having to have Marlon as the second striker this season, and obviously shipped him off. Is it to Roma, I think? Got in a proper centre forward.
Bailey for the Roma swapped Bailey, who came on the pitch for Villa today. For Marlon. So basically, Abraham coming in isn't going to sit around on the bench happily. He's going to be coming in to compete in that centre forward spot. Emery likes having the two centre forwards and will rotate them. And Watkins, who doesn't have penalties, who can be a bit up and down sometimes. Like, he has at times been a joyous FPL pick, a really, really good one to own. I think with another striker around and you can't guarantee the 90 minutes, there's not enough there for me. I'd prefer Rodgers at a slightly cheaper price, and I don't think he's that much less talismanic than Watkins is at this point. So that's where I sit on the fence. I just think it's a lot of money for a non-penalty taking striker that you can't guarantee 90 minutes from. Yeah, and you've got a Rodgers on pens theory, which I'm hoping to come true.
I think it will
come true. It's going to come true. And Nobby in the chat just pointed out that Tammy Abraham is another one similar to Ollie Watkins, where you got to call him by his full name.
Yeah. Good point.
Speaking of which, João Pedro, you can't call him Pedro because that just reminds you of Napoleon Dynamite. Chelsea in general, obviously a bit interesting. João Pedro, another on the put his hand up as an option for TK sellers, and you've got Enzo / Esteval as well on the list. Enzo probably the one that a lot of people are kind of defaulting to. It sounded like he was all right today, but got a penalty because he's on penalties and with Palmer off the pitch, and got his owners a few points after last week's fortuitous assist. Sam. Could you go? I mean, I just bloody love to own Esteval. I think he's just such a good footballer. He's such a fun pick. I did immediately. I was on my run actually at that point, but I saw Esteval scored and got an assisted after I was on my warm down walk back. And I immediately looked. Could I swap my 4.4 million defender to midfielder to Esteval, and I was 0.1 million off. I think if I was 0.0, there'd been a really good chance I'd have just done it. I mean, it's tricky with Chelsea, isn't it? It really is tricky, and lots of good options on the table. But I'd still be looking at Chalobah, thinking, he's probably the best one because of the forward of the kind of the attacking players. It probably is Enzo, or the rest is all sort of up in the air.
Yeah, I'm still very much Enzo, Chalobah, or nothing. We can't trust Palmer. I think that much is clear. It sounds like he was kind of just a precaution not being in the squad today, but that's just going to keep happening. And it could happen against West Ham. It could happen against Wolves. It could happen against Leeds. Can't go Palmer. Way too much money for what you're getting. João Pedro, I've seen a bit of conversation online, and maybe I've missed something, but all I've really seen is he got a few more minutes than average today, and he happened to score. I'm not interested, honestly. He's been such a letdown this season, and very much like Watkins, you absolutely cannot guarantee the minutes for him, even less so than Watkins. I have no idea how many starts he'll get in the next 4 game weeks. It could be 4, it could be 2, it could be 1. Like, you just don't know with him. And he's not on penalties either. So I'm not that interested in João Pedro yet. Maybe I've missed something. Maybe people can educate me on that. But the minutes have been really shaky, and they've just got so many options. Enzo Fernandez and Chalobah are the two that I'd be interested in. Enzo, I wouldn't be stunned if he missed one of the next 4. It could happen, but his minutes are more secure than pretty much any of the other Chelsea picks in advanced areas that I can think of. And with Palmer's doubts over minutes, we've already proven that Enzo is on penalties when Palmer's not on the pitch. And he's also playing a fairly advanced role. At 6.6, I think that's good value for money. And the fixtures are good enough to maybe go after him for a few game weeks. I, very much like you, love Esteval as a player. He's one of those guys that, like, instinctively, I want to own him in FPL because he's so exciting. A bit like Cherky, in the way that, like, I just want him to become a really good, solid pick. I don't think we can guarantee the minutes there yet. And like, if we could, I'd be on him, even if the data wasn't looking good, which, by the way, it is. But the minutes just aren't there consistently enough, and I couldn't guarantee that he's on the pitch long enough to make an impact. So for me, it is very much Enzo or Chalobah, maybe both. And after that, well, Sanchez, I suppose, is the other. But after that, nothing. I'm not that interested.
Yeah. It's just might be one of those that even though the fixtures are great, that I just end up just opting for a longer term pick. It's tricky. I think we'll speak about it later on when we're talking about what we're doing with our teams. But
Yeah.
for me, that adds fuel to the fire of hopefully rolling this week and gathering more information about what I do next, because I could just get Enzo in and then instead of selling Ekatike, do something else, But yeah, we'll see. Final one here is Semenyo. I think we've probably, in the interest of time, spoken about him quite a lot. At the moment, but I think just to add that obviously their fixture's still good. Looks like he is pretty kind of settled for minutes because he's not in the Champions League team. I think that the effective ownership can't be ignored, actually, Sam. He is one who is actually in my plan to potentially be in at some point going forward, just because it's going to be it might be one that I just pick up as a shield pick, depending on how I'm doing it at the time. But equally, as you kind of given voice to already, which I'm just going to hark back to again, at that point, there may be other things that I'm going to want to do. But there's something in game week 26, I think it is. It might be that I kind of get rid of Wilson and I have money for Semenyo, given my plan at the moment. And they'd have a good run of Fulham, Newcastle at home. Fulham and Newcastle at home. Newcastle don't travel well, obviously. Leeds, Forest, and West Ham. Before them blanking, and then they're into kind of different games that we're into wildcard period by them. But that nice little cluster of games around them is actually really enticing. So it might be that I go for it then, just kind of get them in to cover a downside. But we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah. Look, it's always good in FPL to get a goal-scoring midfielder, and he is a goal-scoring midfielder, and he's playing quite centrally at Man City. He's not been molded into the kind of Grealish mold from seasons past, where you've got a bit of a goal-scoring midfielder, a bit of a maverick player that gets maybe the wings chopped off a little bit under Pep. That's not really happened with him yet. Bit like, I don't know if you remember Marmoush's run last year when he came into the team. He was again.
I owned him, I think.
Yeah. I think we both did. And it's reminding me a bit of Semenyo now, where hasn't quite learned all of the drills in the system and exactly the right positions to be in yet. So he's still just shooting at times where Pep might not want him to. I think there was one near the end of the Wolves fixture where I was like, oh, I don't know if Pep would be advising that. Like, interesting for him to go for it. But for now, that looks really good. I say it with every Man City midfielder though, like give it a few weeks, and even Foden up until this point looked absolutely nailed. Cherky, Reinders, Doku, all at different points have been like, yeah, this could be really interesting, right? And then 2 weeks later, they're out of the team, and it is just a bit of a curveball. You can't really see it coming. Foden might be a slight exception there, but Semenyo right now seems like he might be the exception to the rule. I don't know if that will be the case yet. So exciting, good price, good data, great player, but there are a lot of great players at Man City. So I need to see more.
Fair enough. Okay, let's move on to the 1 week pump update this week. Nice and quick. Blanks all round for us. Raul blank for me. Collins blank for you. I've gone for a bit of a daylight robbery opportunity this week with Burnley for Sunderland on the Monday night.
Very nice.
Been performing very well. Old Brian Brobby, bit of a foot manager, sort of backup striker, sort of pick up in the past for me, who could also play on the wing. So warmly disposed to the Dutchman, and he's going to be my pick this week. I didn't want to use up my Chelsea because I feel like I've got a few coming up, so I thought I'd leave my Chelsea powder dry. But you've gone for one.
Yeah, why not? I've gone with Chalobah. Decent chance of a clean sheet, decent chance of DEFCON, and who knows, maybe he might get another goal. I'm quite enjoying the centre-back winning formula to this game at the moment, and Chalobah seems to be one of those that in weeks where I would never expect it, he always finds a route to points. So yeah, Chalobah for me. Hopefully I can make up the ground. I think I'm 32 points behind you at the moment. So 3 goals from Chalobah, I'm right back in it.
Yeah, it's happening, isn't it?
Easy.
Probably right. Right, on to captains this week. So
Yes.
we put table this a minute ago. Let's bring back on the table. So Spurs obviously a bit of a interesting animal this year, but there's obviously the historic thing where Spurs have got 6 points off City basically every season. Thomas Frank at Brentford, had a really, really good record against City. But yeah, it's how long can you kind of keep saying, but it's Haaland? I don't know. It has been an interesting period. The last non-penalty goal was in game week 17. That was probably the last time. The week after, Phil Foden's last non-penalty goal in game week 16 against Crystal Palace, so 2025. Could there be scope to jump onto a Bruno captain this week, or Bumo if you own him? Or, I don't know, we've got Gabriel here as the third pick. I mean, that's more of a bit of a stalking horse, to be honest. If you're in Saka, potentially, I think from memory, he's got a decent record against Leeds. I may be completely making that up, but I've got a feeling he does.
Sounds good. It sounds good.
Could there be scope to move away from Haaland this week? I think this might be the last week that I kind of leave it on Haaland. But after that, I think I'm going to be very open, especially when United rock up at the London Stadium. Well, West Ham are actually doing pretty well, actually. We should probably mention them earlier on that, someone like Bowen is an okay pickup at the moment, but I thought it was rubbish penalties. That penalty was actually really good. Maybe he's been practicing. Danny Dyer both kind of schooling him in the backyard. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think it's probably going to be on Haaland this week. Just kind of a meh. Okay, sure. But after this, I think there might be there's going to be a lot more kind of questions about it. I'm really I'm not quite kind of teetering from the brink from it yet, but I am starting to sway a little bit away from kind of the EO vacuum that is Big Erling.
Yeah, I think for once I'm closer to going against it than you are, which seems odd because usually if any one of us is going to budge, it tends to be you more than me. But I'm pretty 50-50 on Bruno versus Haaland. And that's not to say that I wouldn't go with Haaland. I still absolutely could. But the home game against Fulham, a little bit of redemption. I think he missed the penalty against Fulham earlier on in the season, which is playing on my mind a little bit. But he's just been so unbelievably consistent recently, playing in a more advanced role. The data's looking good. Erling, again, this is all biases in the back of my mind, but Erling does seem to go through these patches around mid-season every year where he just disappears a little bit. And watching City, it just anecdotally feels to me like they're not getting the best out of him. They're not set up to feed Haaland the same level of chances as they were earlier on in the season. And Spurs do tend to have their number a little bit. So yeah, I am genuinely considering Bruno captain, put it that way. I can't say for sure that I'll definitely go there, but right now I can honestly say that it's between either of them, and I could end up on Bruno. I'm very, very close on it.
Review actually has Bruno as the top captain this week. By
I think
it's 0.6 the difference. So I think you'll probably see the most review guys going with that.
Interesting.
Defensively, if you kind of look at it, Fulham are probably a worse defense than Spurs. Realistically, if you remove all the narrative, at home, yeah. Spurs are a much worse defense than Fulham's is. So again, according to Understat, no, not much worse. So yeah, maybe it could go either way. I mean, you're right to point out the consistency. I think that is probably the key. That is the reason why people were captaining Haaland for so long, because he was consistent in doing a goal. And if Bruno is now the guy who's consistent in doing something, then surely that should be something that people should be paying attention to, because even before he was injured, he was still consistently turning around points.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could be persuaded, and it could be an interesting way to take it on. But I suppose it is the effective ownership is kind of something that people are going to bear in mind a little bit. But you know, the old kind of adage, pick the player you think's going to score the most points. Well, chucking all of the stuff from this year, all of the different ways that Bruno scores points, all the way down to the new assist rule that if a ball in the box is passed, no matter what the intended target, if the ball has been given, then it's an assist if it goes in. I like it. Yeah, I could be persuaded. I really could. Yeah, I don't dislike it at all, Sam, honestly.
Yeah, I'm close. I need to probably think about it a little bit more over the next few days, but my instinct was that it is very close between the two of them. I didn't have Haaland down as like an auto captain, which I usually do. Bruno is very much in my thinking, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. Martin's in the chat says that Solio's 0.1 in favour of Haaland. So yeah, it's going to be close, isn't it? Going to be close. Yeah. All right, on to our teams this week then.
Oh, it's me first. Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, well, I thought I was going to have 3 free transfers and I could have a lot of fun this week with my moves. I've got 1 because I used 2 10 minutes before the deadline, as we've already heard. But luckily, those 2 transfers did actually feed into what my plans probably would have been for this week anyway. So I've got 1 free transfer, 1.1 million in the bank. Kelleher is in goal away at Aston Villa. I could arguably play Dubravka away at Sunderland, but neither is ideal. In my back line, I've got 3 at the back. It's double Arsenal defence away at Leeds, Gabriel and Timber, of course, and then Alderete at home to Burnley. In my midfield, it's Elliot Anderson at home to Palace, Rodgers at home to Brentford, Saka away at Leeds, who I think will start after a rest in midweek. Fernandez currently on the vice against Fulham, but that could easily switch. Szoboszlai might be the weak link there at home to Newcastle. And up front, it's Haaland alongside Thiago. On the bench, Anderson, the Fulham Anderson away at Man United, might not be a terrible option to have. And I mentioned Lewis Hall as well, away at Liverpool. The reason I mentioned Lewis Hall is because I've got 1 free transfer, 1.1 million in the bank. There are probably 3 different routes I'm considering. One is upgrading Lewis Hall to Chalobah and probably benching Szoboszlai this week, going with a 4-4-2. Chalobah comes in. Possibly, instead of that, I could go Szoboszlai across to either Enzo, Wilson, or Undai is another one I am considering. Obviously, on penalties at Everton, good underlying data, also an option. I think Enzo is probably the most likely candidate there, but I do also really like Wilson. I actually think his fixtures are underrated up until I plan on wildcarding in game week 32, sorry. And obviously great fixture in game week 31 itself when a few other teams blank. So that's helpful. Or instead of selling Szoboszlai, who's obviously just done the points, so why would I sell him, etc., etc., I could sell Elliot Anderson and upgrade him straight to Harry Wilson instead, which is another option I don't mind. So yeah, 1 free transfer, and there are 3 different routes to either a Chelsea player or Harry Wilson, basically. Any preferences?
I'm not. I don't think you should tell us about Sly against Newcastle. I mean,
Interesting.
saw the performance today. They don't travel well, Sam. I think that's quite. Surely that should be something that's just kind of quite high in mind. They just don't seem to travel very well at all, and it just makes you think that. Right, like right now, if Szoboszlai is Liverpool's talisman, plus he's on penalties, obviously a bit of a review pick, and you've had a bit of grief about that, but you've seen the other side of it this week about what happens if it goes right, and plus they run into good fixtures after not very long, and you might be quite happy just to hold him because he's got the minutes.
Yeah.
Anderson, on the other hand, the ceiling is quite low. So if you can move, if you do kind of feel committed to Wilson, obviously I'm not going to put you off owning Wilson, then I think that might be quite a decent one to do. The models won't touch by Wilson, that's for sure. But if you think the fixtures are underrated, then sure. I mean, I think that might be all right. I don't know. It's just with 1 free transfer. I think that your team is more than serviceable this week. I don't think there's anything like I looked at your team earlier on and just thought, well, Anderson's up against Palace, who are in a bit of a moment. Szoboszlai's up against Newcastle, who are in a bit of a moment. And both of them, I know why you're looking at them thinking, oh, I could move them on. I mean, to look at it, I just think, well, barring kind of that external context, anyone I probably would want to move on is your goalkeeper, which then kind of leads me to think, well, I just roll that. Obviously, there's
could get Sanchez.
You could do, yeah, you could do. I mean, there's obviously the Chelsea factor. Yeah, so maybe you can make the case to yourself that Szoboszlai and Enzo are like assets. So you're just moving one penalty taker who's potential penalty taker, depending on who's playing, who's on some of the pieces for another one. Could you do Anderson to Enzo? Sorry,
no, not quite. Otherwise, I'd be making that move.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, obviously that's standout obvious.
Yeah. I think I'm like 0.2 short of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, same for me. No. So if you're in a world where your options are a goalkeeper transfer or rolling, I think it probably is quite clear that you just roll it for me. It might be good as well to gain a bit more information on Chelsea because who knows, Palm might be back. Obviously they've got the congestion which now comes. We've been maybe a bit surprised by what Rossini has done in terms of kind of playing Palmer, despite him being basically on his last legs. But that West Ham game comes after Napoli midweek, and then midweek after that, they've then got us in the semi-final. Is Rossini gonna at 3-2 gonna write that one off?
No,
I don't know.
Surely not. You can't be seen to be doing that.
So it basically becomes the one that I'm the time that I really want to then invest in Chelsea becomes a very kind of very short-term period because I think that the Arsenal-Chelsea game does affect the Wolves-Chelsea game, and Wolves have actually been a lot better. But it's really that kind of the Leeds game at home and the Burnley game at home, which is sandwiched by the whole game, which is away. Which I think that'll be one, even though it's Rossini's old club, etc. I think that'll be the one where we'll see a lot of rotation. The league will be kind of prioritised around that, and then it's international break after that. So I think those two. That's when I want to jump in on maybe someone on Chelsea if I've got a free transfer, just because I'm going to have something in that. I think it's going to be like even like someone who trying to be as studied and disassociated from it as me is going to have to try to go in on that. like especially if you've got the last game before international break being Burnley at home. I think that's going to be like one that you can't ignore. But it might be quite good to just information gather at the moment and just kind of just lean into the idea. Some people may be listen to me saying this and saying, well, you're overstating rotation, blah blah blah, but Chelsea got so many players, and I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just putting a bit of stock in the fact that they could probably, although West Ham had their own resurgence, beat West Ham, or at least by that point they may have a lot of tired players, and then they'll get into the League Cup semi-final, which I don't know. I can't see them I can't see them playing a huge rotated team in that. I might be wrong. I might be wrong, but
no, I agree with that. They'll go full strength for that, surely. I mean, you can't be seen to be throwing a semi-final when you're only 1 goal down. Like you get a goal there, take it to penalties or whatever, you're well in that. Yeah, I think my decision will come down to what my minutes estimates are for Enzo and Chalobah over the next 4. I think I would like to buy either of them, probably not both, but I would like at least one of them. And then you seem pretty warm on Szoboszlai. I'm not that warm on him, honestly. I've actually been pretty disappointed with his performance.
Yeah.
Aside from the free kick goal, I think I kind of like I love pocketing those points. That's fantastic. But aside from that, not being all that impressed. He won't be on penalties when Salah's on the pitch, and Salah will, by the looks of it, be on the pitch for a lot of it. So I'm probably colder on Szoboszlai than maybe most are. And therefore Wilson comes into my thinking for Szoboszlai. Enzo does, maybe Ndai as an outside shout. Yeah, I need to really try and figure out what my starting guesses are for Enzo over the next 4. If I think he starts at least 3 of them, then I might be tempted to go there. If I'm not confident that it's minimum 3 and he gets 80 plus in those 3 at least, then I'll probably avoid it. Chalobah's also in my thinking for Hall. Like that might just be a simple answer because he just
feels good.
He has all sorts of different ways of scoring all sorts of kind of crazy points. So yeah. Anyway, that's enough for my team. On to yours.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm a roll this week.
Mm-hmm.
I think the route to I think the 3-5-2. I think I'm fairly convinced now. I'm not even kind of saying it's because XCK did blank this week, but from what we've spoken about on this on the show, and also just kind of general thinking about FPL, because I'm sad and I think about it a lot. Just because I'm, just do it to block out the sadness. I think Ekatike probably does need to go for one of the cheaper boys and Krupi or Mane eventually to get Potts up to a 5th midfielder. I think that's going to be the way it is, because there's just so many options in midfield who are going to be impactful.
Yeah.
I am 0.3 off the straight swap from Potts to Enzo and all this sort of thing. There's no way in hell I'm wildcarding. My plan has been brought forward basically by a week, because this week was going to be the Foden to Bruno week, but it's already happened. So I think it's a roll. And then next week I decide whether I do go through with Ekatike to Mane or Krupi and do Potts to Bumo, or I do something else, because I could do Ekatike to, I could still do the Ekatike to cheap player and then do Enzo in, and then I have lots of money again to get rid of O'Reilly, because I do want to get rid of O'Reilly, but he does again seem to be in the circle of trust still somehow. And he's playing for me this week. I didn't get hurt again. So Raya in goal, Gabriel, O'Reilly, and Tarko at the back. Bruno, Rogers, Rice, and Wilson on the mid 4, and Haaland, Thiago, and Ekatike. It feels like it's not the best team for this week, I'm not going to lie, but it's also it's good enough just to kind of roll over. I feel like any one transfer I'd make, if I sold O'Reilly to somebody else, I know the Burnley boys have got the Sunderland guys have got Burnley, but that doesn't help me, because any move I can't do O'Reilly to Alderete and then still afford Potts up to Bumo, so I'd just be basically cutting off my nose to spite my face if I did that move. So any move I make just doesn't really help me very much, apart from selling Ekatike to Krupi or Mane, who both play each other on that Wolves versus Bournemouth game. But what's the upside of doing that? there's actually quite little upside. Might be that midweek something happens which obviously forces my hand. So it might be, if Ekitike got injured or something like that, and obviously that would force my hand to do that a week early. But at the moment, it's a roll. It's okay. It's all okay. FPL doesn't matter that much, really, but we all enjoy thinking about it, don't we? To occupy some brain space.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. I think in your case, the double move next week is more powerful than any single move you can make this week, and you can't set up the second move next week given the players that you'd be replacing Ekitike with now aren't better than Ekitike this week. So you might as well roll it. I think your team looks fine. Ekitike should start against Newcastle. I would not be surprised whatsoever if you got a green out of this. Yeah, I think it's absolutely fine. Completely solid for this week. And fingers crossed we both get green arrows, I guess. And obviously you've still got Taco to play tomorrow night as well. So maybe you're sitting around 80k by the time we even get to game week 24, which would be a nice bonus.
We'll see.
We will see. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening and for watching. As always, we have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. Myself at FPL Pricey. On X, it's WGTA_FPL. Again, FPL Pricey on there. And on YouTube, if you're not already watching it on there, it's Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. And I'm on there at FPL Pricey. If you did enjoy the pod, we'd really appreciate it if you could follow us on those social channels. Give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And of course, if you could leave a like and hit subscribe if you're watching along on YouTube, that would be greatly appreciated as well.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks all for being with us a little bit early this week. Next time back on our usual Tuesday, which will be it won't be the 27th, but it'll actually finally be the end of January, won't it? It'll be the God, the 3rd of February we're back for that. Hope we just you think about the fixture swings coming up, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?